Alright, Phantom on a Budget fans, it's me, Lindsay. I am back in the saddle, back in the makeup chair, back behind the mask. I am so excited to share with you this new tutorial. This is the 1943 Phantom of the Opera Claude Rains Acid Burn Phantom Makeup Tutorial. Unlike the other tutorials I've done in the past, we're using a new product today. Well, it's not new, it's new to me and new to you guys, hopefully. It's 3rd degree, it's a silicone makeup. We're going to be using that, mixing that together, applying it much like you would apply gelatin to create that acid burn look. So if you want to see what's going on behind this amazing replica mask, keep watching the tutorial. If you want one of these masks, I would advise you shoot Justin a message over at Longshore Masks on Facebook and see if he has something available. It's pretty awesome. It's a beautiful mask. And lastly, if you ever have any Phantom of the Opera costuming, cosplay, makeup, wig, whatever questions, head on over to my website, www.phantomonabudget.com, or you can email me at phantom@phantomonabudget.com. Enjoy the tutorial, and I will see you guys at the end. Okay, everybody, so to do this makeup, the Claude Rains Acid Burn Phantom makeup, that what we're going to be using today for the first time is a product called 3rd Degree. Now, this is a silicone makeup. It comes in a Part A and a Part B substance. You mix these two together on your little mixing plate here with your spatula, and you put them in equal amounts, mix them together, and it creates that silicone substance that you can apply directly to your face. Have about 5 or 6 minutes working time with silicone. And it's great because it applies much like gelatin would, so if you're used to using gelatin, congratulations, it's very, very similar. It's just a lot better wearing than gelatin is. It's not susceptible to heat, and it's just, in my opinion, it's more versatile makeup. Other things for this makeup, something to color it with. I'm using Skin Illustrator palettes today primarily because with silicone, much like gelatin, it has that translucent property to it. You want to try to avoid something like cream makeup or rubber mask grease paint, cake makeup, anything that's really opaque. So the beauty of alcohol activated makeup is that it allows you to do those thinner washes and maintain some of that translucency that the silicone offers you. In addition to that, I have a makeup pencil just to outline various parts of the scarring that I want to do, your glue stick for your, if you're gluing your eyebrow down, brushes, a cheap palette over there with different eyeshadow type stuff if I want to use that for contouring or highlighting or whatnot, or shadowing, your setting powder, your rubbing alcohol, mirror, of course, and over here we've got our rigid collodion, which we're going to be using a little bit of to create indented scarring on the face. And drying blood, of course, if you want to have a fresher wound versus the older, more purpley type wound he has in the movie. So that's pretty much it. And of course, if you want to really top it off, you have your special Claude Rains version of the Phantom mask. This one is done by Longshore Masks. Yeah, and if you're interested in having one of those, then definitely shoot him a message on Facebook and see if he has any available. But let's get started. So first thing I'm doing here is just going through and just wiping my skin down with some rubbing alcohol. Make sure the surface is clean and ready for the silicone makeup. And looking at the camera, being cute. And with the silicone going over the eyebrow area, what I want to do here is just glue the eyebrow down so I can protect the hair, so the hair doesn't get caught up in the silicone or in the rigid collodion or anything like that. So, easy enough to just go through, and like I showed you in the Robert Englund makeup tutorial, is take your glue stick, your Elmer's, elementary school glue stick, and work it into the hair of your eyebrow. And once it's good and worked in there and flat, you go ahead and powder it. And what this does is it just puts that little protective layer between your eyebrow and whatever is going to stick to it, so you have eyebrows when you are done. And then just go ahead and, take the powder off with the brush. Make sure all the excess powder is gone. And then here what I'm doing is just outlining with a white makeup pencil where I want the rigid collodion scars to go. And as I'm outlining that, I'm also giving myself the playing field, if you will, for the silicone makeup, roughly where I want that to go, and everything like that. Kind of help, very handy to just give yourself a roadmap with the makeup so that you're not, diverting and going way off plan and creating something that's a little out of control. Yep, take a look at the camera, be cute again, and then now I am taking my rigid collodion and applying it and painting it on roughly where I had outlined it. With rigid collodion, you have to apply it in layers. So each layer will have to dry first before you can apply the next one. And as it dries, it contracts the skin together. So you'll see as we go along here, what it does is that you see that contracting, that deepening effect of the scar. But if you just went and just threw a bunch in there or on your skin at once, you wouldn't get that effect. You have to just take your time in between each layer, let it dry, and apply it. You can apply it as much as you want to get however deep a scar that you want, and that's roughly what it looks like after about, maybe 5 or so layers. Looks like I had a bad day at the bar. So here I'm taking the silicone makeup. This is the part A of the 3rd degree. And I'm going to take some of this out using my makeup spatula. And I'm going to keep very careful note of how much I'm actually using out of part A. And you just put it on your palette. Make sure you get all of the part A off, as well as any dust or anything that happens to be sitting on the plate, which I happened just to notice right then. And then part B. Very important that you use equal parts A and B. If you have one that's, you have more of one than the other, the mixture won't set up correctly. So then you put part B on with part A, and then you just start working it in together and mixing them together very thoroughly. And once they're thoroughly mixed, then you can apply it. But like I was saying, if you have more of one than the other, then it never sets up, and it just stays this really sticky, gnarly mess, which you don't want, because you want this to be able to dry and set up so you could paint it and just, not be a gnarly mess the entire time. So I'm mixing it up as best I can with the spatula on the palette, making sure it's very thoroughly mixed between the two parts, taking my time here, and then just put a little bit on the spatula and just start working it onto the skin. This applies pretty similarly to gelatin, so if you're familiar with working with gelatin, roughly the same technique. And what I'm doing here is trying to make sure that I work the outside edges very carefully. And I apply it in small batches. And as I'm working with it, I want to make sure that whatever outer edge I have is blended very seamlessly into the skin as carefully as I can possibly get it. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Whatever I want to do kind of in the middle there is I'm starting to play with it, but I'm feathering it out on the outside edge. Kind of the cool thing with silicone is I think it gives you a lot more working time than gelatin. Gelatin can cool and set up very quickly. Silicone would give you roughly about 5 minutes of working time with it, which is a lot of time. So it gives you the ability and the flexibility to just, play with the design a little bit, move things around, do some texturing. And that's a lot of what I'm doing here, is just trying to get the texture that I want. And with an acid burn type makeup, you don't have to go crazy with the texturing. So acid burns tend to be a lot smoother than other types of burns, depending on the situation. So in this case, I'm adding a little bit of texture to make it interesting, but I'm not trying to go too crazy by creating a bunch of scarring or anything like that. Just trying to keep it smooth and what have you. Actually, what I'm doing here is adding a few grooves in, because when you see in the final makeup, what I'm going for is if he had grabbed it with his hand and kind of slid his hand down his cheek, or would have had like little finger marks. So I'm going through right here and just kind of adding them in with a spatula, building it up on one side and then cutting it through with the edge of the spatula. And mixing up another batch of it. So with silicone, like gelatin, use it in small batches, because again, it will set up and harden, and then you can't use it once it's hard. So, only mix up a little bit at a time as you're going through this. And with this makeup, again, because you're not trying to create like crazy texturing, you really don't need that much silicone. So just enough to kind of give the hint of some scarring and what have you, but not go crazy with making a bunch of different types of forms or anything on the face. So you really don't need that much, but just mix in small batches and then apply in small batches as well. And here I'm working between two rigid collodion stars. So one's more toward the middle of the forehead, and then one's kind of off to the corner of my eyebrow. And right here, what I'm doing is building up between those two and creating more of that raised three-dimensional effect between the scars. So between like the raised, effect of the silicone and the indented scarring, I just thought it kind of gave a really cool look to it and just more dimension and more depth. So and with that added working time of the silicone, you have so much time to just kind of play with it and create different designs. And I like the spatula. It's new. I got a Krylon set, and it's just the right size. It kind of lets you do a lot of detail work if you want, or apply large batches at the same time with the same tool. So I thought that was pretty effective. And there, what I'm doing is just applying some of the silicone over the corner of my eyebrow. I didn't block out the entire eyebrow. I wanted the hair kind of toward the corner of the eye in the middle of the face to still be there. But the idea was that it covers the outer part of the eyebrow. And here what I'm doing is just I'm applying a little bit of powder over the dried inset silicone. Just take some of the glare and the shininess out of it. And it's going to set it up to be better to paint too. But as I'm powdering it, like now you can actually see where some of the dimension actually is. Versus, kind of earlier when it was all shiny, you can't really tell. So just make sure to powder it when you're done and then knock all of the extra powder off of it. Which is what I'm doing here, is just making sure there's no loose powder. And this is ready to paint. I'm being super thorough with the brush today. So look at that. And also just double check your edges on the outside of the silicone. Just make sure everything is blending correctly into the skin. If you have any like little bits you have to pull off and take care of it, then that's fine. So I did a little bit of filming of what I call the good half of the face. So much like the Andrew Lloyd Webber deformity, this one is done on the right side of the face. So the left side is just kind of normal. So if you're not an older dude, you need to do some work on the other side of your face as well to make this a more convincing makeup. Like with everything else that we do, So all I'm doing right here is just basing out in my usual cream makeup foundation. It's a cream makeup, a TV paint stick by Krylon. It's the shade 3W, and that's the actual shade that they use on Broadway. So fun trivia tip, if you're looking for the shade they're using on actors on Broadway, it's Krylon's TV paint stick, shade 3W. And I'm also doing like a live feed on my Instagram. So on the video here, it looks like I'm talking to nobody, but I was in fact talking to a few of my followers on Instagram and just trying to have some fun and entertain myself while I was sitting in the makeup chair. So with cream makeup, of course, you have to powder it. So I'm just going through and I am powdering the sucker really thoroughly because, stage makeup, cream makeup especially, tends to be on the heavier side than your normal street makeup, which still needs powdering, but stage makeup, cream makeup needs a lot of powdering to make it set. So powdered it. Now I'm going in with a brush and making sure I'm knocking off all the extra powder. And here's my shadow wheel. It's a Ben Nye shadow wheel, and I'm going in and marking out my cheekbones, trying to make that part of my face look more sunken in, the nasolabial fold right there, and trying to deepen the set of my eyes by creating more of a shadow effect. And then going on the bridge of the nose as well, and drawing that down to create just more angular features, which men tend to have more angular features than women do. So just trying to add the shadowing to give that effect. And if you don't know how to do this, there are some really awesome tutorials all over YouTube. If you, you search for stage makeup or gender swap makeup, there's a lot. And there are just a lot of good opportunities. So I don't have to go into total detail about it here, but this is pretty much the same routine that I have to do for my Andrew Lloyd Webber Phantom as well. It's almost the exact same routine. So it's kind of a nice practice because I have Broadway con coming up. This is my Skin Illustrator palette. This is my alcohol activated palette. That's the rose adjuster and the coral adjuster that I'm pointing to. I'm going to use both of them to put some life into this makeup. So I'm going in with a coral adjuster first. Again, this is alcohol activated, so I dip my brush in the 91% alcohol and then put it into the palette. And this is the coral adjuster, so it's a little bit more like on the peach side. And the silicone, when it dries, it tends to be on the whiter side, especially if you have a couple layers of it. So what the coral adjuster does is kind of go back in and add a little bit more life to it. And I think you can probably see as I'm adding it, how much better it looks with that added on there. Starting to blend it back into my skin tone a little bit. And it's kind of hard to tell, I admit, with the lighting situation in my house. Still don't have like professional lights or anything like that. So it's hard to tell in the video, and it was kind of hard sitting in the makeup chair whether or not I was getting the right blend. It kind of looked a little bit too orange in the mirror. So on a couple of occasions, I had to go and lighten it up. With alcohol activated makeup, if you put it on too heavy and it's too much color, what you can do is dip your brush just in the alcohol, the isopropyl alcohol, and put it back on the makeup itself on your face, and then just thin out the wash. So silicone makeup, the beauty of it is that it has that translucent property, and you want to maintain that, so you do that by adding very thin washes of color. So what I'm doing here is adding the rose adjuster, so this is more like a pink type color, and I don't know if you can tell on the camera or not, but it's coming on very pink, and I did want the pink because it's that irritated, fairly recent acid burn that I'm going for, and there I'm blending it into my forehead to make the blend a little bit more realistic. So I'm just trying to use thin washes of these different alcohol activated colors just to layer them. So if you layer them in thin washes, it looks a lot more realistic than if I just went in there with like a cream pink and just slapped it on there. It would look really kind of flat and artificial. So here's more of the rose adjuster, and it is going on pretty thick. And what I end up doing later, I don't know if I showed it on the video or not, is just I went in there with the alcohol and thinned it back out because it ended up being too pink for my liking. Yep, pretty pink. Very, very pink. It's not bad, but I just wanted something that was a little bit more realistic. So here what I'm doing is just going in and adding some of that rose adjuster to the indented scars. And then just under the eye, just make sure if you're using alcohol activated, you don't use it too close to the eye because it's going to sting. And it's just not comfortable. So try to use like a cream or cake makeup around the eye itself. But everything else, you can pretty much do the alcohol activated makeup in this makeup. Yeah, just blending it out a little bit. And then, yeah, so here I had already gone in and taken the alcohol and lightened up that pink a little bit more. And now what I'm doing is I have a blood palette, also alcohol activated, and I'm adding some dried blood tones into this, and that's the name of the actual color on the palette is dried blood. It comes out when it was applied, I think it just looked really realistic, and it just kind of put more of that realism back into the skin tone where before it had just mainly just been pink. So I'm adding this into the deeper areas to give some depth because it's a darker color. So to give that depth, you want the darker colors in the deeper parts of the areas, and then on the higher parts of the makeup, you put a lighter color. So I'm still adding that in. I had a little bit as well gone in and added some very light washes of blue as well to kind of give it a little bit more depth in some areas, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So yep. Sorry, my audio cut out there for just a half a second. So yep, so now what I'm doing is I'm going in on the tops of the makeup where it stands out. At least I think that nope, just kidding. This is where I'm adding some more of the dried blood into the other deep parts of the area of the makeup, trying to bring that color out a little bit more. Layer it on top of the pink, and then just blend it out into the edges. And notice, like, I'm not really like painting and using paint strokes. I'm just kind of dabbing it on, stippling it with the tip of the brush. So when you use brush strokes in this kind of situation, it starts to look pretty fake. So just little taps, little stipples, probably the best way to go. Still adding that color in. This is a fun makeup to do. And then here, finally, is I went in and added some yellow to the top of the higher parts of the makeup, and just wanted to kind of give that effect of relatively recently burned, acid burned skin, where it has that kind of sickly yellow bit to it. And to heighten the effect, if you really want to go recent, take some alka-seltzer or any anti-acid tablets, put it on a plate, crush it up with a spoon, and this is going to help you create that active acid look if you're really trying to go for realism here. It's short-lived, but it's a cool effect. So there I put some glycerin on my face and just put the crushed up tablets on my face, just kind of hanging out. And here I've sprayed it with water. And when you spray it with water, it gives you that bubbly acid look. All right, everyone, so here is the complete makeup with wig and costume. And as you can see, close up on the silicone creates a really cool acidy burn effect. And you can use this effect for a lot of different types of makeup. It doesn't have to be Phantom related. Or if you want to do another version of Phantom, such as the 2004 Gerard Butler look, silicone would be a great option for that too. It lets you kind of move stuff around and create your own design, create your own textures, and color it accordingly, however you want. So this version of the makeup, kind of the thought behind it was just a little bit fresher. Later on in the movie, when the wound's a little bit older, there's a lot more purple in it. And I thought it was just a little bit more interesting to, maybe if it was a little bit more recent, keep some of the yellows and everything in there, where you can see where the flesh has been just kind of melted, and it's gross. And it's awesome. I also hope you got to see the cool acid effect. If you take just some anti-acid tablets, crush them up, stick them on here. You can use like not gelatin, but glycerin or something like that to kind of get it to stick. Spray it with water, and they'll just start to bubble like it's actually acid. So if you want to like take your acid Phantom game up until like 11, that's how you do it. It's a little bit messy, but if you're going for like a photo shoot or you're doing like a film clip or something and you want that active acid burning into the flesh, that's how you do it. And acid tablets and water. Another thing I wanted to point out too, again, is combining the rigid collodion, which is the indented scarring you see here and off to the side there. Using that to help deepen the effect, the 3D effect. And rigid collodion, again, if you use it very sparingly, in just thin lines like that, it's good. Don't use it all over your face like I did the first time I did a Phantom makeup. Almost hurt myself. It was bad. Turned out just fine. But don't be slathering rigid collodion all over your face. It's not a good way to go. Just use it in one or two thinner lines. It's going to contract the skin, so you don't want to be using it all over your face. And just a reminder too, okay, with silicone and gelatin too, they both have that translucent property to them. So whenever you can, if you can stay away from using cake makeup, cream makeup, grease paint, anything that's really opaque, you can stick to something more along the lines of alcohol activated, or keeping something just light with thin washes of makeup, the better it's going to look, because having that kind of translucent effect with the skin makes it look that much more realistic. But if I were to pile a bunch of grease paint on there, it would start looking really flat really fast, and it would take that sort of three-dimensional translucent-ish property out of the makeup. Alright, ladies and gents, so now that we've taken care of the makeup, if you're looking for the rest of the costume, pretty standard, right? Black tailcoat. This is my antique Victorian tailcoat. It is back out of the closet, back out of retirement for this video. Felt it just had the right feel for this character, you know. And black waistcoat, black tie. If you want to get really fancy, you happen to have a violin handy. Walk around with that. It's pretty cool. And of course, one more thing. This guy. This is a replica Claude Rains mask by Longshore Masks. And if you're interested in getting one of these, just shoot Justin a message. He's over on Facebook. I think he's on Instagram as well. So you can see if he has any in the inventory, if he can make one for you. It's a beautiful mask. Incredibly well done as usual. Justin makes amazing replicas, and he's got different models from different versions of the Angela Weber show. I think he's got a Cheney mask, he's got this guy. If you need a phantom mask of any style, definitely drop him a line because he does amazing work. So thank you very much, Justin, for this. It's incredible. I love this mask. It's so unique, I think, in the phantom world, and it's a beautiful color too. So this is one of my very, very favorites out there ever. So I'm so happy to have it with me and feature it on this tutorial. And once again, of course, if you ever have any questions about makeup, wigs, costumes, anything for a Phantom of the Opera cosplay, or an amateur production of the show, please give me a shout. My email is phantom@phantomonabudget.com. My website is phantomonabudget.com. Ton of resources there. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I look forward to hearing from you. So thanks again once more for watching this tutorial. Happy phantoming.